Part 2.
Part 2. This is Pesach of 2018, just for a timestamp on your recording. What we're going to cover in this hour, hopefully, is identifying the plumb line, qualifying it with a locked-in mechanism of how you can know that we're right. Which is to say, as we were kind of kicking around at the beginning of the last session, people really want to be right. I mean, depending on what religion you were ever taught, that you were born on the face of the earth on the other side of the world, and you happen to believe that the crocodile is the chief god, or the sun, or the fat guy that floats on the clouds, or whatever it might be. I mean, you're not intentionally wrong, you're trying to be right. So the question is, how do we know whether we're right? And even if you have 40,000 Protestant denominations, how do you know you're right? If you're, take the big three that all believe technically in the same forefather Abraham and the same basic book of the singular deity, you've got Judaism, Islam, Christianity. How do you know which of those three are right? Or maybe none of them are right. How do we know? So we talked about this plumb line, this level by which accuracy is determinable. And then, there's this question, well, in my heart I believe. In my heart I can believe in anything. That doesn't necessarily prove it true. You can say, yeah, but I believe the Holy Spirit's leading me, and certainly I would agree that the job of the Ruach HaKodesh, the Ruach from Elohim, is to lead us into the truth. But then how do we know whether we're listening to the right voice of the right Ruach, or whether or not what we think he's telling us actually is the truth? And I think that Jeremiah 31 has something to say about that, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But I brought up this thing about Daniel chapter 12. Where the angel Gabriel says to him, hide the words and seal the book until the time of the end. So, if the time of the end is the time when we finally come to our senses, okay, so it's the end of the stupidity, the end of the ignorance. But there's another end worth considering, not to go into it too much, but I never did hear about this until 2004. I was 50 years old. I spent my whole life in the church, and I've never heard this reference. Nowadays, if you punch this up on the internet, you'll probably find something about it, but at that time, there was no mention. It's what's known as the 2,730-year curse. Has anybody not heard of this before? You never heard of it?
No.
Are you familiar with the Bible? Pretty much? Or?
Oh, yes, she is.
Yes? Okay. In Leviticus 26, 4 times, Israel is told by Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, if you will not listen to my voice, the curse will be compounded or multiplied by 7. Now, it doesn't say whether it's 7 times or 7 ways, just amplified, but it says by 7. Now, the significance of that, in Hebrew, the number 7 is the word spelled Shin Bet Ayin. Let me ask you this. Why is the number 7 regarded as the sacred number, or the number of heaven? Do you have any idea?
I assume because on the 7th day, God rested after...
He certainly rested on the 7th day, but why would he choose the 7th day to rest? Why is there 7 Moedim? Why is there 7 branches on menorah? Why is there 7 sevens and then the Jubilee? Why is there 7 candlesticks or 7 churches in Revelation? The question is, why would he keep using the number 7? Do you have any idea?
Is number meant of completion.
The word Kof Lamed, call, in fact, you know that department store chain called KOHL, Kohl's?
Yeah.
Kof Lamed, or Kof Lamed, pronounced Kol, literally means all, everything. So I might assume that kol is a Hebrew word. I don't know if they did it on purpose, but it basically means we got everything you need in here.
Well, the one man who
Yeah.
did it was a Hebrew, was a Jew.
He's
Yeah.
gotta be Jewish.
Well, that's the word kol. So anyway, but the point is that means everything complete. And there's a couple other words that have something to do with that. But the word Shavah, number 7, does mean complete. It means satisfied. So if somebody says, if you hire a guy to come mow your lawn and he doesn't hit that one area, you say, well, I'll be satisfied when you finish mowing the lawn over that area that you don't want to do. If he satisfies the job, then now he's complete. It also means surfeited. If you look in this dictionary, well, surfeited, what is that? Well, replete, full, overflowing. So like the surf at the ocean is the foam on top that beyond. So that reminds me of a verse where Elohim says that he uses, now he has some qualifiers, good measure, pressed down, shaken together, and overflowing. Nobody can ever accuse him of shortchanging you, cheating you, just being a little skimpy. He says, listen, anytime I do something that's going to be packed, shaken down, and overflowing, well, that's also then a picture of the number 7. That's the meaning of the word Shavah, which is the number 7, which is also the word for vow and oath. And also it's the word for curse. Now, there is another word for curse, which is,
Allah.
well, that's what it is, kuf lamed, I think, and aleph resh is also the word to curse. Ar, like a pirate. That's a Hebrew word meaning to curse. But what I'm saying is that the word to make a vow also includes the problems that you get if you break that vow. And it's all the number 7. So if you look at the first 15 verses or so of Leviticus 26, he says, this is what the good things are, he describes them, that will happen to you if you keep this vow, which is this negotiated oath of agreement between Elohim and Israel. But if you break this vow, if you consider these words with a casual disregard, like, whatever, then this is what's going to happen, and he describes it. Very similarly, in Deuteronomy 28, just for reference, he does the same thing. He gives a few verses of this is what the blessing looks like, and then he gives a whole bunch of verses, this is what the curse looks like. Just so happens, if you look over world history over the last 3,000 years or so, it looks just like those 50 verses of the curse in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28. That's what we've been experiencing. Well, what's the blessing look like? Well, a little bit in the Garden of Eden, a little bit in the time of David, a little bit when Yahushua was walking around. Kind of looks like that. But we've never experienced it ever since, as humanity, you might say. I think that stands to be redeemed or rectified, but that's another matter. The point is, the word 7 means this is an oath by vow, and it means 7. So he says, if you break this vow, then just like your oath 7 times, he'll give us, say, 7 times wonderful blessings, he's going to give us 7 times terrible curses. So if you go back to Leviticus 26, and he says 4 times he'll crank up the curse by 7, 7 what? 7 times the nominal factor. And that wasn't told until 1,000 years later. Moshe is about 500 BC. You come up to about 500 BC, 1500 to 500. That's a 1,000-year difference. Ezekiel chapter 4. Ezekiel was told to lay on his side and point at this little picture of Jerusalem under siege, that 40 days on one side for the southern kingdom, Yehuda, and then it told to lay on the other side 390 days. That's over a year. 390 days pointing at this picture, and he says that's for the northern kingdom. That's the curse, the nominal time span of the curse. Well, what that means is, in my interpretation, which is based on what somebody else told me, was that if he says your jail sentence is 390 days, but if you do not come back to these words of this covenant, at the time, like when the bell tolls, time's up. Do you choose, O northern kingdom, do you choose to come back to the terms of this vow? If they say, no way, we're out here playing in the world. He says, okay, another 390. Cranks it up. After 390, the bell tolls. He says, do you choose to come back to the terms of this covenant? No! Okay, they go out and play in the world. So you get, the Vikings and the Huns and Visigoths and Aztecs and everybody just tearing each other apart. 4 times he presents the option, 390 years apart, and finally says, that's it, you're getting the full 7. 7 times 390 is 2,730. Well, it just so happens that when this was initiated, the curse started to be implemented, Assyria came in and conquered the northern kingdom of Samaria. And the capital fell in 721. 721 BC. Some people say it was 722, but it's somewhere around there. The difference between 2,730 and 721, if you take 721 BC and add that many number of years, you come up with 2009. But there's no year 0, so it makes it 2010. Well, that was just 8 years ago. So in other words, according to what Israel was told back there in Mount Sinai in Leviticus, or that era, there was going to be a curse implemented from 721 BC until the year 2010, which was just 7 years ago, 8 years ago, depending on the time of the year when you reference the beginning of the year. So that means throughout the entire Christian era, we've been under a curse. Have you ever heard this before?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah? How about you guys?
In a little
Patrick?
different way.
Well, the point is, I'd never heard of this such a thing. I never knew that we were under a curse. During the days of the Reformation, the days of the Crusades, the days of the Apostles, even the days of the Maccabees, the northern kingdom was under this curse.
And
Ever
dispersed
since 721 BC.
and dispersed among the nations.
Cast out among the nations, and part of the curse was forgetting who they were, where they came from, and where they were headed.
Right.
So they were wandering around lost, without an identity. Well, what happened as of 2010? Well, the jail sentence is over. Legally, he said 7 times. 7 times what? He gave the stipulation in Ezekiel chapter 4, 390. So 7 times 390, 2010, we're done. Well, now what do we do? Jeremiah 31 brings us back to that, which we'll address in a minute. But the point is, what I'm trying to say about this is that Daniel, back around 500 BC, was told the Het Tav Mem and Samet Tav Mem, the words, the Sefer, the book, and so we were talking about the idea that perhaps Daniel encoded. So if you're going to change the code of the words, just briefly, the letter Het is a fence. If you look at the word spelled Tav Mem, it's where we get the word that means perfect. So somehow he put into a fence the perfect, clear understanding of what these words meant. This letter, Samik, is written in this format, in the Paleo letter, is like a backbone with ribs. It's like a tree trunk with branches. It's some sort of a trellis. It's the skeletal arrangement. Like the orthography of the letters, the shape of the letters. How do you determine how to draw these letters? So this word means literally to make of general opinion, anonymous, unclear. Nobody knows. So he was told to do something to the letters where nobody knows the real Tom, the real meaning. And nobody cares. They're just obfuscated, made unclear. And it would be put, sealed, as I said, it's like signing up for a subscription of a magazine, or going into jail for a certain amount of years because the judge said so. Whatever Daniel did was going to be maintained in this capacity of ignorant, unknowing, and not caring for 2,730 years. Were you pointing at something?
Yeah, she had a question, I think.
Oh, sorry.
Sierra?
He was told to seal up the book. How did we get to the, he's told to change the letter script?
He
I
was
don't
told-
follow one to the
okay.
other, yeah.
He was told to hide the words
Uh-huh,
and seal the book.
okay.
Okay, the word for hide the words, I believe, is this word here. And that means to make unclear, to obfuscate.
Well, he could write it in a code by scrambling the letters or putting in a cipher at some point, not
He could have done
necessarily
that.
changing the script.
That's correct.
Okay.
Now, he could have done anything, and maybe he didn't even do that. So I've, traveled around and asked different people, hey, what do you think Daniel did? Nobody seems to know. One person told me, hey, we know that Daniel changed the letter. It's like, really? Well, who's we and how do you know that? They never gave me an answer. But here's my point. I was thinking that Daniel could have changed the style of letters. Now, maybe nobody agrees with me. That's okay. Maybe it's my own speculation, whatever. But here's the thing. If you look at the meaning of that word, it means to make them unclear. Now, after 500 BC, Ezra comes back to Jerusalem, and Ezra has Torah scrolls written in modern Hebrew. It's said that Ezra, when they went into Babylon, they had the Paleo-Hebrew. Ezra found in the books that Babylon had looted from the various places, he found the Torah scrolls written in modern Hebrew. Like Isaac Moses said, it was retained by the sacred scribes and priests and all. And then he brought that back. Okay, maybe. I don't have any way to prove it. But if Daniel, being the chief Chaldean, was authorized and empowered by Gabriel, the archangel, to change the orthography, he might have done it. In which case, because he was a contemporary with Ezra, he could have given it to him and had him do it. Had him have it written in the modern Hebrew, and that became the modern Hebrew. So this is now my speculation. Now that you could say, well, where's the proof? Let me give you some more proof as credibility. The angel told him to hide the words of the book until the time of the end. So as I said, the word end is not necessarily the end of the world. It can mean to wake up. Waking up from what? Well, it might mean the end of the 2,730-year curse. So you could say, as of 2010, we now qualify. But this just simply is translated until, and this is translated time. But there's another way to read these letters. In the Paleo, you could see it, but it's the same. Ayin means eye. But if you look at the meaning in the dictionary for the word ayin, means to weigh carefully, balance exactly, to look and determine. It's also the word for a well or a deep, a fountain, the gleam or the sparkle of the appearance of something. So the word couldn't be taken to understand or to be able to look at it and really see what's going on. And this word dalet is a door. So in my ignorant illiteracy of looking at this language before I could read the language, I saw this as meaning understand the door. And this word in Daniel 12:4 is hyphenated to understand the tav. Well, if the tav is actually the same essence as the word ot, which means a mark or a sign, that's what a tav is. It's some sort of a symbol or a signal, a glyph representing something else, like the musical note or a chevron or a shamrock means something. Got the American flag symbol, a shield. I look at that and I go, oh, I know what that means. That's America. Same thing. It's just some symbol representing something else. That's what an ot is. So that's what a tav is, a mark or a sign. So this could be read as understand the symbology. Hide the words of the seal of the book until the time of them waking up. So then what happens when they wake up? Well, this is my thinking. So again, somebody could choose to ignore what I'm saying. They could choose to say, no, I'm deceived, this has nothing to do with anything. Well, maybe I'm up here blah, 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 and I apologize for wasting your afternoon if that's the case. But what I think is that there's an encrypted message here. Understanding the door is yoked to understanding the meanings of the letters. After all, in Jeremiah 31, he says they will all know me, and that word me can be literally read as my oath as per the letters of the alphabet. Right? That's the word oath, which is, and this makes it my, O-T, and that's words translated me. So, everything else that I say here, just so you know, is going to be predicated on this assumption. Meaning, based on the fact that I think the letters of the alphabet hold his identity, that everything else I say is going to be built upon that premise. Now, the premise is going to be proven, or like you put rebar inside concrete. I have an old house and the foundation doesn't have rebar, so if the foundation cracks, the foundation can separate because there's nothing holding it together. So what I'm suggesting is that somehow what he built here was that understanding the letters of the alphabet are contingent on and act in unison with understanding the door. And understanding the door is contingent on and working in unison with understanding the letters of the alphabet. Now, I don't know of anybody else who associates this, but this is what my attention was drawn to back in 2000, end of 2004, beginning of 2005. Well, do you know what the letters of the alphabet mean? That's understanding the letters. Sure we do. Everybody knows what the letters mean. It's universally accepted. The letter Aleph is an ox. The letter Aleph, the word Aleph, means ox. But it also means the number 1 and the number 1,000. And it also means, by implication, strength. The word Aleph also means taught, trained, and domesticated, which is to be of the house. So you domesticate an ox. Well, you also domesticate dogs and cats. Yes?
That also goes along with it's for the glory of Yahuwah to conceal a matter, and then the glory of kings to search it out.
So we're just searching it out. And somebody could say, yeah, you're barking up the wrong tree. You're searching down the wrong valley. It's like, okay, then tell you what. Why don't you go find another tree to bark up and another alley to, maybe you'll find something. You know, Godspeed, God bless you. Go find your search and maybe you'll find something. That's okay. I'm not trying to pull anybody back, and I'm not trying to say, this is what you have to do. Just for the record, yeah.
Since the whole point of the discussion is about me, the definition of me.
OT, yes?
Yes, and Yeshua is the door. Yeshua is the Aleph Tav. Is this not then, what I see in there, is that it's the revelation of who he is to both houses of Israel.
Okay, now wait a
Not the
minute.
house of Israel and house of Jacob.
Now, sorry to pick on you here, but
Yeah.
you said you were of Yehuda. She just said something. She said, well,
I'm of the tribe of Joseph.
okay, but you study with Yehuda to some
Oh,
extent?
yeah.
Okay, she just said, well, Yeshua is the door. Do they ever say those words? Yeshua is the door?
We discuss Yeshua more than most people would.
Do they ever say Yeshua is the door?
No.
Okay, so here, I'm just bringing up a point. You just said, matter-of-factly,
But
as if everybody should know that Yeshua is the door, but she just says, no, they don't ever really say that. So now we have this
You know,
huge dichotomy.
Jews know that Mashiach is coming, and more so now than ever before, okay? Some of the older rabbis say 80 years, some say 4, okay?
Okay, but
They don't
who's the
believe
Mashiach?
But
What Mashiach?
it's not as, like, it seems to me that Gentiles are like,
And they're obsessed about all kinds
they're
of crazy stuff.
obsessed, but they really are obsessed about, about the, Rabbi says, Yeshua, and Mashiach. Well, so we don't have that obsession, okay, because I believe that he was the Mashiach, okay, but most Jews don't.
But how would you prove it one way or the other? Where's the proof that whether he was or whether he wasn't? If they're
It's not
expecting,
important to them.
so if they're expecting Mashiach to come, they're not expecting Jesus to come back, right?
No, I wouldn't say that.
They're
No.
not actively anticipating Jesus to come back.
Oh, no.
Okay, so, but they are expecting Mashiach to be here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So then they have a different, perhaps, they have a different definition of what and who Mashiach is than the Christians might.
I don't think so. It's just not studied like Gentiles really.
Okay, I'm going to suggest I'm going to point the finger at the real Mashiach here. Such that I would hope any Jew, anybody that associates themselves with Brother Yehuda would find a common belief, a common emunah here, and that anybody who believes that that guy who lived 2,000 years ago, that people refer to as Jesus the Christ, that Messianics might refer to as Yahusha, or perhaps Yeshua HaMashiach. What do you mean by that? How do you define this guy? What is it that qualifies or characterizes him as different than any other personality? And as a matter of fact, if someone says Jesus Christ and the other guy says Yeshua, are they one and the same? I say no, they're not one and the same.
Yeah, and a Jew, if you would say that to a Jew, he would say, "Oh, I know about Jesus Christ. I know about, Christianity."
But who's this other guy?
No, they equate that with the Crusades, the
Sure.
Holocaust.
All kinds of world history.
Yeah,
2,000 years of world
right.
history in that name.
Right.
So I'm going to now show you a different character. Forget the Christian thing for a minute. Just forget all about Christianity for a minute. In fact, let's forget about Judaism for a minute, too. Let's just look at the letters. If this particular letter says, understand the door, and you, because of the way you were brought up, the things that you have learned, the things that you have studied, the Ruach speaking to you as you study the words of that book, you say, I believe that this door refers to Yeshua. Why would you believe such a thing?
I really don't want to explain that. I'm sorry, just keep
Well,
going.
I would
I'm
suggest-
at the end of the conversation.
Okay, let me suggest. I would suggest that the reason you believe such a thing is because you read the words printed in the English Bible in the New Testament where Jesus said, I am the door. That's pretty clear and simple. But from what I hear, the Jews at large don't read the New Testament, nor are they encouraged to read the New Testament. So, by default, many of them have never heard the words that that man claimed to be the door. So they're out of luck, you might say. This, on the other hand, if I say, hey, understand the meaning of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. I never read the Hebrew alphabet letters. In fact, until a few years ago, I had no clue that the letters were pictures and meant anything other than just some other language. Like in Spanish, C-A-S-A means house, casa. Well, okay. There's no pictures. It's just a house. It's just a word. So what I'm suggesting is, for the last 2,000 years since Yeshua was here, anybody that has been learning the Torah, the Old Testament, like I'm guessing our brother Yehuda teaches through his rabbinical yeshivas, in that they're teaching what these words mean. See, the word Talmud, in my hearing, is kind of a bad word, meaning, it's not the truth of the Torah, it's them rabbis teaching their teachings. It's like, wait a minute. The word lamed means teach and learn. Talmud means teachings. Talmudim was the word disciples. Disciples mean discipline. So you learn the instructions and you discipline yourself to obey the instructions. If Mikael was not disciplined, nobody would hire him to go work on their heating systems. He'd blow the place up. Discipline is not a bad word. Talmud is not a bad word. That whole thing that says, the Talmud, that's stupid, ignorant talk from people who don't know what the other people are doing.
I agree.
So what I'm saying is, to understand what the Hebrew letters mean is a very good thing. But for a whole half the world or more to never hear that Yeshua claimed to be the door, then they have missed out on the opportunity to apply this equation. Now I'm going to suggest that what we're looking at here is like a mathematical equation. Understanding the door is tied to, joined with, understanding the letters. To the extent, and this is what I'm proposing, is that when Yeshua said, I am the door, what qualified him to be telling the truth is that every letter of the Hebrew alphabet identified him as being the door. And how do you know what the letters mean? Well, what the letters mean is clear. Aleph is ox, Bet is house, Gimel's camel, Dalet's door. Meaning, the word Aleph means ox. The word Gimel means camel. The word Samek means prop. The word Ayin means eye. So what? There's another way to read those words. Another way to read the meaning of those letters. And those words and letters are absolutely and particularly given meaning by the life of Yahusha, such that I can read these letters like this. The word Bereshit starts with the letter Bet. Bereshit means in the beginning. The first letter of the scripture in Genesis 1:1 is a giant letter Bet. It's written as an anomaly. It's different. All the other letters are small. It's a big one, and you can say, why is that? Well, there's a crypto meaning, but the point is, this is the beginning of the cosmos, this physical earth, embodiment, material objects. The letter Aleph is the one silent letter in Hebrew, never articulated. You can't express it. In fact, if I sat here and wrote the letter Aleph, because it's now in object form, it's no longer Aleph. It's in Bet form, because Bet form is to be composed, composition, material. If I could say, oh yes, I understand that, it's no longer an Aleph, it's a Bet, because Aleph is so infinitely, silently, beyond comprehension, it can't even be expressed.
Right.
It'd be like in the first dimension versus the second
It's a different dimension.
Third
So,
It's a miltha, what we call the miltha, cannot be expressed.
can't be expressed. So as soon as I even say the word Aleph, it's no longer Aleph, it's an Aleph in Bet form. If I say Father or Creator or God, it's drop down to where I can wrap my mind around it, and it's no longer Alephness, it's Betness. So, this is a little example of the way the Hebrew letters works. Aleph stuff is kind of like infinite, incomprehensible, undefinable. You can't even wrap your mouth of words around it, but all of a sudden when you put it into Bet form, boom, here it is in our domain. Bereshit, body, behold. Even English pulls in some of these same things. So the guy with the big ideas, artist, start with letter A, administrator, architect, author, these, not every A word, but I'm just saying you can see these ideas that the one with the idea that hasn't been articulated, like who built this house? Bet, Bana, Bet Nun Hey is construction. Here we are in the universe. And so people will say, how do you prove God exists? How do you believe and how do you prove that the universe was made by somebody else? It's like, how do you prove this house was made by somebody else?
Amen.
It's here. And if I can look back and say, look, the scripture also tells us the heavens declare the glory of Elohim. What that means is, he doesn't elaborate any other details other than, see where you are? I'm the guy that put it there. That's all you get. You could choose believe, he's the guy that put it here, or you could choose believe, nobody put it here. So if somebody was an atheist, don't believe in this higher power, very interesting, there was a movie where they were interviewing these atheists. This movie was Expelled. That's the name of it, Expelled. And they were interviewing Richard Dawkins. And at the very end of the movie, he's like the arch-atheist. He was finally being cornered by Ben Stein in this conversation. He says, how'd this place get here? Well, I don't know. Aliens of some kind put this place here. It just wasn't God. Oh, okay. Somebody that wasn't human built this place. We're just not going to give him that label God because you hate the idea of that guy God. But who do you think that alien was? He even admitted the same thing. Bet is here because Aleph put it here. And that's where it all starts. And then we can look at Gimel. Well, Gimel is a verb, but it's also a foot. Dalet is a door, and in an esoteric way, you could say Dalet speaks of earthness. And the only way I can qualify it in the short term to keep along with the narrative here is that you got 4, north, south, east, west, winter, summer, spring, fall. Air, water, earth, fire. Solid, liquid, gas, plasma. Fournish speaks of the terrestrial earthiness. Okay, so hey is the letter that means, hey, look, behold. It's literally the word the. Vav is the number 6. In Revelation it says, well, Vav is the number for man. You got 666, and there's nowhere in Scripture where it says Vav is man, just so you know. But there's this man motif going on with Vav. Zion is a letter which is a weapon, which means to be cut off or adorned by weapons. So you have a picture of a policeman with a pistol. Oh, he's the cop. Beware. Or you have an officer with a ceremonial sword. He may never pull it out and take it into battle, but the ceremonial sword is to be adorned with weapons. That's the meaning of the letter Zion. Remember, you ever see on TV Xena, the warrior princess?
Yeah.
Xena. That's Zion with a hey, which is the feminine ending. Zion, Xena. It's the same word. Xena, the warrior princess, is a Hebrew picture of the letter Zion. It's the same word. She was adorned by weapons. She used weapons. She had, like Batman, this whole arsenal of weapons that she pull out and, Anyway, tet is a fence. It's a pasture. It's an enclosure. Tet is something round, a full basket. Snakes are round, so people say, well, a snake is like a tet.
What was the line?
Tet is like, the snake is like the tet.
Yep.
Excuse me?
I'm just thinking.
What was the lamed?
Well, we're getting there.
Shepherd's crook, yeah.
Yod is a working hand. Picture an excavator arm. Reach out, backhoe, picks up, and so the hand that grabs, that's the yod. Kaf is an open hand, the palm. So it's lines, these leaves of this plant that go out like a palm tree, rays of the sun. That's a picture of Kaf. Lamed is a shepherd's staff. Lamed is the word that means teach and learn. The word lamed means both teach and learn. It also means to rehearse. How do you learn something? You go over it and over it. Mayim is the word for water, but it's also a place. So mem as a prefix letter means the place of, or if you leave someplace, it's the place you were at. So it means away from. You're not there anymore. Nun isn't really the word fish, but it's kind of like a fish. So nun is this action letter, like it has life. Like a fish multiplies and lives in water, fish jumps out of the water catching a fly, or the point is, nun is this action jumping out of its environment. They say it's a fish jumping out of water. That's an easy picture. Samik is a prop, like that trellis, easel, power pole, mast of a ship. So the paleo way to draw that looks like a mast of a ship. It's also a picture of a tree, the trunk and branches. I am literally drawn like an eyeball. Like here, the circle with the dot. Well, that also looks like a piece of fruit. Stem, pulp of the fruit, seed in the middle, same picture. And that meaning will play into the other value of what the letter is. Pei, an open mouth, or that which opens. The mouth could be closed, but the pei can open. Zadi, they say, is a fish hook, is drawn with a barb. But as a straight thing with a hook coming out of it, it's also something sprouting. A picture of Aaron's rod that budded. A picture of a caterpillar that turns into a butterfly and sprouts the wing. A piece of wood, like a match that you light and suddenly there's a flame. It's like, oh, that's a Zadi picture. They'll tell you, people who know the language will say, well, Zadi is a man lying on his side with his knee in the air. Okay, that's a picture of something straight with something sticking out the side. Well, it's a hunter. A hunter lays on his side and he sticks up. Just because you have a hunter who's laying down and props up to shoot something doesn't mean that Zadi means hunter who's laying on his side with his knee in the air. So one is a picture of the other. And I'm saying this because that's the problem. That's the problem which has held to the unclarity of all this through all these years. I'll show you the solution to the problem in just a minute. Kuf is a sun on the horizon or the back of the head. The word kof, which is spelled kufav pei, means monkey. So what does a monkey have to do with the sun on the horizon, and it has to do with the back of the head? It's something way off in the distance. Or something like the sun on the horizon, which is the end of the day, which follows, like the back of your head or your heel, like Yaakov means footprints. That's what, like the wake of the ship. Resh is a head. The word ha-hey-resh, har, means mountain. So if you look out and say, whoa, look at that mountain peak. That thing which distinguishes itself up above the rest of the horizon view, that's the resh, like the head. It doesn't necessarily mean head, because if you look at the dictionary, the word rosh can also mean foundation, basis, and summit, which is the most important. So is it the head meaning the tallest, or the head meaning the foremost? George Washington was the head of this country, but he's in the grave. He's not standing up speaking. Trump is. Well, which one is the... Resh is this concept which embodies other things. Sheen means teeth and fire. It's where we get the word shine, something that is shiny or like a fire blazing. Tav means a mark or a sign. And, like a cross, there's a grave, you put a cross on it, that's the sign that somebody dead is buried there. Okay, that's the meaning of the letters. I'll run through them real quick. See if you can get a feeling for what the letters are talking about. Think of this as like this flip book in animation, right? You got these little pictures and you can see a little animated picture, you know what I mean? So I'm going to say these words kind of quickly and see if you get the taste or the feeling of an animation sequence. Ox, house, camel, door, window, nail, weapon, fence, basket, grabbing hand, open hand, shepherd staff, water, fish, trellis, eye, mouth, fish hook, back of the head, teeth, mark.
Sounds like,
Does anybody get a story out of that?
no, but it sounds like it'd be a good one.
Okay, tell you what, I'm gonna give you a different value. I'm gonna give a different value to the letters, and then we'll do it again, okay?
Okay.
You
Okay,
can't
now-
miss this. I can't miss this.
I'm
Okay.
not missing this. I'm
If
listening.
I
hear.
told you that I have 5 symbols, and that the symbols were fruits. This one means banana, this one means apple, orange, grape, pear. I could take those 5 symbols and shuffle them around, and anytime I ask you what they mean, you're just going to assemble the value that I gave you. But if I take those same 5 symbols and I said, oh, these are animals. Dog, cat, monkey, giraffe, rhinoceros, and penguin. Oh! Now, no matter how I shuffle up these letters, you have to define what they mean by that assemblage of the value that I just gave you. So I'm going to give you another value for what these letters mean, such that if you only understood the letters by their object value, which I just gave you, that every time you see the letters, that's all you're going to see is ox, house, camel, door, window, nail, weapon, fence, basket, hand, other hand, shepherd staff, water, fish, prop, eye, mouth, fish hook, back of the head, teeth, and mark. If that's the only value I give you, then everything in your consciousness, your entire world, has to do something with reorganizing those letters as you spell words, and that's all you have to play with. I'm going to show you something else here. Now, if Aleph represents the infinite one who made the heavens and the earth, Bet, like the big letter Bereshit, then suddenly the big letter Bereshit means to put in cosmos format, and everything Aleph represents the infinite, the eternal, the guy with the big idea, the plan, who can't be described unless you look at what he made. Now that's a whole different definition of Aleph and Bet, other than ox and house.
Basically a concept.
It's a concept. However, the big strong guy like the ox, the infinite one, Bet, built his house. It says, heaven is my throne, earth is my footstool. Well, the earth is the place you put your feet. I looked up the definition for footstool, and we think, oh, it's an ottoman, it's that object, it's certain size and shape. It says it's the place you put your feet. This is the place you put your feet. Well, that's the earth.
Yeah.
According to him, well, he doesn't have any feet. He's the Great Spirit. But if you start a word with the letter Aleph, it basically means I am or I will. It's a prefix letter. Some words don't mean I am or I will because it's not a word with a prefix letter. But if it's a prefix letter, it means I am or I will. If Bet means to put in form, and Gimel is foot, and if Dalet is the earth, or the place I put my feet, then I would suggest that the Almighty Infinite One reserved for himself the prerogative to put some aspect of his self, his own personal identity, into cosmos matter format, to give himself a foot, make the earth so he has a place to put his foot and walk the earth if he just so pleases. Doesn't he have that prerogative? There are some people say, the Almighty would never do such a thing. Says who?
He walked in the garden.
He chose to walk in the garden, but whether he walked in bodily form, the same word could be said like the treetops moving when the evening winds blow. Well, maybe he just appeared in spirit form. Would he, could he, give himself a body with a foot to walk the earth if he felt like it?
Absolutely.
Well, he's the Almighty. He could do anything he wants, except that. Come on. Now, if you're one of those people who says he'll do anything he wants except that, then the conversation's over. There's no point in listening to anything else I'm going to say. But, if we can read these 4 letters, I, who built the universe, will put myself into some sort of bodily format with a foot to come to the earth. Hey, revealed as, or looking like, Vav, a human, Zion, who would be put to the weapon, put to death, Het, be put into a tomb, Tet, the round rock rolled in front of it, and Yod, a Roman seal put on it to hold it shut. Well, gee, that starts to look a lot like the story of Yeshua. And it just so happens that the word spelled Bet Gimel Dalet means to be cloaked. It also means deceive, betray, beguile, act treacherously. That means I'm going to be real sneaky here, and I'm going to wrap myself up in some matter, Dalet, hey, to reveal the door to people, to humanity, Vav, saying, look, here's the way back to the house of the Father. So I'm reading the words Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Vav, and backwards, Hey, Dalet, Gimel, Bet, Aleph. He came down here, the sent one, the Gimel, to the earth, Dalet, and said, I am the door. Through me, you can get your way back to the Father's house. But Pilate said, take this man. So, behold, hey, Zion is to specify this, and Vav being the man. Pilate took that man and adorned him with Roman weapons. The crown of thorns, the Roman flail ripping open his back, the robe of state put on him, and that little scepter that they gave him, and said, ha ha ha, behold this man, look what we have done to your king. So what Pilate did on that day fulfilled Hey Vav Zion as the prophecy that this guy Aleph, who came down in disguise, Bet Gimel Dalet, that they then threw into the tomb, Het Tet Yod, is that guy that this alphabet is talking about. And then, 3 days and 3 nights later, to jump to the end here, Zodi is a picture of resurrection. It's not just a man lying aside with his knee in the air. It's a butterfly crawling out of the cocoon. Here he goes into the tomb. Here he's coming out of the tomb, resurrection, 3 days and 3 nights. And Kuf, then he ascended up into the heavens. The word kum, kumi, is where we get to arise. And the word hamakom is the place. So it's both rising up and placing down. And the angels, Malakim, said, the same way you see him rising up into heavens, he's going to come back with all his associates and come back to this place. So the letter Kuf is drawn like this, rising up from the temporal earth into the heavenlies, and then later, back of the head, sun on the horizon, long reach of the monkey arm. Later he's going to gather up all his guys and come back to this very spot, Mount of Olives. That's the letter Kuf. So the letter Kuf is this projection into the future, and then Resh Shin Tav. Letter Kuf is also drawn as a kind of like a sickle, this reaping. The word Resh Shin Tav means net, trap, or snare. It's like going to the grocery store and having a grocery bag. What do you put in it? All the stuff that's yours. You put it in it, you pay for it, and you go home. Well, the word spelled Aleph, Resh Shin Tav, literally is the word betrothed. So he's going to, now I'm playing with shuffling the letters around. Who are the betrothed? The one that he did this for, so in the last day when he comes back, he'll send out the angels to reap. They'll gather up their ones that belong to him, put them in the net, trap, snare, basket, grocery bag, and take them to the place that he has prepared. That's the story in the alphabet. And then you could say, well, what about these letters in between? The word spelled Kaf Lamed, Kol, all, if you put the yod in front, it means to have the power and capacity to prevail, to contain it all. So he, when he was put into the tomb, he didn't, oh, they've undone me, I'm defeated. He has the power and capacity to prevail and contain it all. Because his hand, yod, is on the what? Kaf Lamed? What's Kaf Lamed? Is part of this code. Without going into too many details, I would maintain that the Kaf Lamed lines up with the Torah instructions. Kaf is open hands, the lines of instruction, Lamed the shepherd staff. So just like we had on the music, we had, here's a note, here's a word, what does it mean? Well, here's the lines of instructions of the Torah, and here's the staff of the instructions, the authorized meaning of what these letters and words mean. And so that's, for him to have a hand, a grasp of the Torah is what gives him the power and capacity to prevail. The word spelled Kaf Lamed Mem is where we get the word calm or calamity, which is to put to shame, put to reproach, just despised as a failure. Mem Nun is where we get the word manna, which is what? What's this? Where's this from? And it's like the Nun jumps out of the Mem. He said, unless a seed dies and goes into the ground, it won't reproduce. So he was killed, put into the tomb, and from the depth of that place, something sprouted back to life, like Nun jumping out of the Mem, the life coming out of the dead seed, the fish jumping out of the water. Psalmic is not just a picture of a prop, but the paleo-psalmic of 3 straight lines with a line is very similar to the menorah. And he said, I'm the vine, you are the branches. So the seed turns into this vine, and we are the branches coming from that vine who are told to bear fruit. The fruit we are told to bear looks like the letter ayin, which is the next letter. The letter ayin is basically what it looks like, what happens when you do the things he said to do. And if we bear bad fruit, it's because we're not doing what he said. If we're doing what he said and we bear good fruit, the letter Pei is the mouth which eats of that fruit for the good of the whole community, you might say. And then the letter Zadi is that which is the promise, the hope set before us. Now, I just gave you an association of the letters. So I can look at these very same letters. And now here, let me read them and tell me if you can think of a story by which you can interpret the Hebrew alphabet. I, who am the creator of the heavens and the earth, put myself, some type of myself, some aspect of myself, into bodily format, into a container, with a foot, to come to the earth, in disguise, to, well, in the disguise which looks like a human, to show humans the way back to the Father's house, being the door of their transition. He then becomes the focal point by which this becomes that and that becomes that, like a doorway threshold. Zion is to be distinguished by the seventh day as the sign, or to be cut off from those people, thrown into a tomb with the round rock rolled in front, yet by my own hand I have done this. And the word spelled Het Tet Yod literally means sin. Het Tet Aleph means sin, Het Tet means sin, Het Tet Yod means my sin, but the same word means to incur guilt, which is to say, I have incurred guilt. It's the same word for sin offering, or my sin offering, which is to say now, my sin offering has incurred my guilt for me. And the same word, Het Tet Yod, means so that I can find favor and become clean. That's why he did it. There's not a single verse anywhere in the scripture, in the Torah, that says, or in the Tanakh that says, the Messiah is going to come and die for your sins. He's a Passover lamb. He's going to take away the sins of the world. That's all New Testament stuff. Where do they get that from? There's not a single verse in the Old Testament that says the Messiah is going to come and die for you so that you can have your sins forgiven. It's right here. Het Tet Yod. This guy, the Aleph, who's Bet Gimel Dalet, Hey Vav Zion, Het Tet Yod. That's where it's written that this guy is our sin offering to absolve us of our guilt so that we can be cleansed and find favor. This is an incredible, astounding mystery made manifest. Because if it wasn't for Yeshua having been here 2,000 years ago, and Pilate saying, Ecce homo, behold this man, and throwing him into the tomb, these letters would find no value except ox, house, camel, door. But because that Yahusha was here and went through that whole escapade of being ripped to pieces and then coming back to life, he fulfills this Hebrew alphabet as if the alphabet itself was the prophecy identifying the actual, true, valid, authentic Mashiach. And the word Mashiach, Mem, Shin, Yod, Het. This letter Mem means the place of, or the tool, that which, the one who, and Shin, Yod, Het is the word for conversation, communication. He is this communication given tangibility. The word Mem, Shin, Mush is where we get something feels mushy. It's to touch or feel. So he is this communication coming down from the infinite realm on the other side of the physical creation to this material world, Aleph transcending into Bet, as one that we can grab a hold of, touch and feel. The word dal, or dalal, det lamed lamed, means to hang down impoverished and weakened. The same way you drop a bucket down into a well to scoop up water and bring it up. It's the same picture. Dalal means a bucket you drop down. The same way you weaken yourself, make yourself vulnerable to, instead of being strong and aloof, that's the word Aleph, aloof, they can't touch me, he took off his armor, bared his arm, and stuck his arm down into the snake pit, which is us down here in this earth, so that we could bite him and rip his flesh off. Which is what they did with the Zion. Why? Because like the bucket of Dalal, those who would choose to believe him, to enter with him, to use him as their passage, jump into the bucket, and he pulls us up back to the Father's house. That's Hebrew words. It has nothing to do with Christianity, nor does it have anything to do with Judaism. It's just the Hebrew words, spelled by these letters in their natural sequence order. I'm not even shuffling the words around to spell other words. For my sin, he came down in disguise to have his disguise ripped off, thrown into the tomb, so that whoever Yod grabs a hold of, Kaf Lamed, the Torah, will re-sprout back to life. Samek Ayin Pei is the word to branch and diversify. The seed that falls and dies will diversify, multiply, yield a crop, 30, 60, 100-fold. That's the picture. Zadi, sprout back to life. Kuf, raise up unto the exalted status of Resh. So here you have like the caterpillar type, Ben Yosef, goes into the cocoon and comes out the butterfly type, Ben David, the exalted king. The humble servant becomes the exalted king. Exactly what happened to Yeshua, the same thing happens to us. This is a prophecy about human progression as he intended us to be created. We arrive on this earth through the Dalet, the female matrix, to be a little baby and learn things and grow and progress, and we learn and we develop and we make certain choices. We die in the hopes that before us is the day of the resurrection. Zadi, rising up unto a whole new reality that he was the prototype model of, that showed us this life is not all there is, and he said so. So the Tav at the end is kind of like this signet stamp, this seal there. He says, because I said so. So as we learn these letters, we could sit here and say, if I think that these letters are just their object names, I will only see one level, like the names of fruits. But if I say these object letters are the story of the actual bona fide Mashiach, well now, that's Ayin Dalet. You understand that because Yahusha came here and did that action, it gives meaning to the letters of the alphabet. But the meanings of the letters of the alphabet validate him as being the authentic guy. So it's this catch-22 where the two are synchronized with each other. So I'll show you one other level without being too wordy, but just so you grasp it. What does it mean that the letters validate him? When Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh gave his people the day of the Shabbat, he said, this is the sign that you are mine, my people, and I am yours, your Elohim. This day is the sign. This is the signet, the seal. If you keep this day, that's the proof, the evidence. This is a legal illustration. Then certain people say, let's change that day to a different day. So they change the day to a different day. Does that invalidate what he said? No. What he said endures forever. So there's a whole bunch of people that decide as a whim of their own autonomy to change the day and say, this is the sign that you're one of us. Let's make it, say, the first day instead of the seventh day. In fact, we'll even come up with a real good reason. We'll claim that Jesus rose from the dead on the first day of the week. Well, if you look real closely, it's probably Saturday night, but that's a different matter. We're going to claim it was the first day of the week, and then we'll say, you have to call this day that we call holy, holy in order to be one of us. If not, we're going to kill you. Does that mean the day was changed? If the creator of the heavens and the earth said, because I created the heavens and the earth in 6 days and rested the seventh, and so this seventh day is the sign that I am your Elohim and you are my people, then it remains the seventh day. Then everybody who changed it is no longer carrying the sign, and they could say, well, I don't have the sign that I'm his people, but I hope he knows my heart. And maybe that's good enough. Or maybe I made a decision to believe in Jesus, so maybe that's good enough. He said, have this sign, and that would be the indicator, but I'm not going to go with the sign. I'm going to go with my belief. Is that good enough?
No.
Well, I don't know. You better check it out with him. I'm not going to say it's not good enough. I don't know what he's going to say. I don't even want to go there. I'm not even going to venture down that road and try to figure out what it looks like from sightseeing through the windows of that bus. Forget it. Why don't we go back to what he said?
Exactly.
Now, if you go to Leviticus 23, what he said was, there's 7, what he calls appointed times. The term is moedim. The word ed, spelled ayin down, it literally means witness and testimony. As a Christian, I was told, go out and witness your faith. Give a testimony of what you believe. Well, he already gave us 7 feasts, 7 appointed times. One feast, you're not supposed to eat anything, and that's not really a feast, but it's a feast of his words and a feast of his instructions. But my point is, he gave us 7 appointed times that bear witness as a testimony that he is our Elohim, and he, the maker of heavens and earth, we are his people. And somebody else, in about the year 321 or 325 or somewhere around there, Council of Nicaea, somebody else changed it all and said, no more, that's going to be illegal. It'll be illegal in the Roman Empire to regard any of those occasions. Does that mean that the Almighty changed? No. It just means that because his people, the people of the Almighty, had so corrupted his way, that if you look in Leviticus 26 and Deuteronomy 28 and as well as other pieces, he said, I'm not going to listen to you guys anymore. You don't listen to me, I'm not going to listen to you. See ya! And he let our enemies come in and tear us apart. That's what he did. That must have been the devil. He said that he is, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh is going to call in our enemies to tear us apart if we don't listen to him. So what does it mean to listen to him? When he said, these are my appointed times, let's regard them as appointed times. Okay, so these 7 pictures here, the big white fence, I'm suggesting lines up with Het Tet Yod. Kaf Lamed with the altar of sacrifice, Mem Nun with the labor, Samik with the menorah, Ayin, table of showbread, Pei with the altar of incense, Zadi with the Ark of the Covenant. That each one of these pictures of the Mishkan also line up with Pesach, unleavened bread for 7 days, 50 days of counting Shavuot, the day of Yom Teruah, first day of the 7th month in the fall, the day of Yom Kippur, the 10th day of the 7th month, in the fall. Sukkot, 7 days, on the 15th to the 21st, and Shemini Atzeret, the 22nd. So just the same way you got 22 letters, it lines up with the 22nd day of the 7th month. More to elaborate that, which is on other talks that we've done. But the point about this is that the 7 pieces of the Mishkan coordinate themselves with the 7 Moedim, which coordinate themselves with the meanings of these letters, which are also the heart of identifying Yahusha as the Messiah. But they're not on Christian terms. The whole Christian church has done away with this. So if Jesus the Christ is the guy whose followers, whose church, identifies himself as the one who do not regard the Moedim, who changed the 7th day to the 1st day, then he is not the same character identity as this guy who is validated by the testimony, the Moed, that these 7 Moedim are his witnesses. And the 7th day, lining up with the Zion here, is in the place of the crucifixion, and the other 7th day, lining up with the Zadi, the place of the Ark of the Covenant. These two things, call them relics. The Ark of the Covenant in the Old Testament, lining up with the Sabbath day, the place of the crucifixion, lining up with the red heifer sacrifice and the crucifixion, are the two greatest icons of graphic symbols in the entire Bible, and they both line up with the 7th day. They're both weapons. If you want to regard spiritual warfare, these are the 2 letters that represent weapons. And the church has eradicated, eliminated, and disdained them. I take that to read, they must not have any weapons. Their spiritual warfare is like playing tiddlywinks with tanks. Not to say there's not some apparent clout to those who believe in Jesus the Christ and do spiritual warfare, but it is nothing like and not anything of the caliber of what he gave us when he says, I, Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh, will be your high tower insurmountably beyond the reach of your adversaries. Why is there stories like in Nigeria? My brother's gone there and showed people the book of Luke. They believe in Jesus as their Messiah. The Muslims come in at night, light their houses on fire. They come running out and they chop them up with machetes. Why is that allowed? Why should the God of heaven and earth, who says, I will be your high tower, why should he allow that to happen? Because they have forsaken, they have never been taught, they don't know about this covenant that he said would never be done away with. As long as the heavens and the earth exist, not one word, not one dot above the I will ever be done away with. But yet the entire church seems to fail to transmit this message. And so the repercussions, he said, to the measure that you disregard my voice is the measure that I cannot hear you, because it's a mirror image. And so Brother Yehuda looks at the Christian teachings and they say, no way. We will not turn our backs on these words. And the Christians say, well, if you want to be Jews for Jesus, you got to turn your back on the Sabbath day, turn your back on the festivals. They're nothing but culture. Wrong. It's not Jewish culture. It's the kingdom of Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh's culture, which only Brother Yehuda has retained. Thank you very much, Brother Yehuda. But Brother Yehuda has been lied to about the identity of this Mashiach, whose entire heart is the Moedim. And because Yeshua himself came in every letter, filling it to the full, and the Christians have misrepresented it to the rest of the world, including Brother Yehuda, and so Yehuda cannot believe in that guy. But should they believe in the real Yahusha? Yes, because Yeshua himself is the embodiment of these letters. So, Daniel, hide the words and seal the book until the time that we come to the real terms, that the real identity of the Messiah is described by these 22 letters, at the heart of which is the Moedim and the Sabbath day. And how do we know what the letters mean? They're not just ox, house, camel, door. They are the story of the one who came down from heaven to earth, was ripped apart by Pilate, thrown into the tomb, resurrected 3 days and 3 nights later, rose and is coming back. That's the guy that translates what these letters mean. And that's Ayin Dalet Ayin Tav, which I believe is the key to the Mishkan pattern code, which hereby is here. And then if you look at Jeremiah 31, it says, they will all know me. He's this guy that's identified by these 22 letters. And then you back up a little bit in Jeremiah 31, verse 16. There's hope for your future. That's a picture of the Zadi resurrecting. Nam Yahweh, and your children will return to their border. Not only the physical border of Israel, which I believe we're calling that to, but this is our border. All of this is the stuff He gave us. This is our heritage. This is the words of the treasury that He gave us, if we know what they mean. I have indeed heard Ephraim moaning. You have chastised me, and I have become chastened like an untrained calf. The word aleph is taught, trained, and domesticated. Just like the untrained calf, Ephraim, like the prodigal son, that Ephraim is representative of the 10 tribes of the north. Ephraim took the inheritance. He went out, he blew it all, riotous living, prodigal son story, and he was lost, bewildered, ignorant, lied to, crippled, and all of a sudden one day he comes to his senses. Why? Yeshua said, he's out there feeding the pigs. And he says, gee, I wish I could eat the food like these pigs do. In Hebrew, the word chazir, het zayin nud resh, is the word pig, but it also means one who returns. If you know Hebrew, he says, I wish I could eat the food of one of these ones who return. It's the same word pig, one who returns. I wish I could eat the food of one who returns, because he wasn't allowed to eat the food of the pigs. He had to feed the pigs so the pigs get fat, so every pound is valuable, and you can't sit there and eat the food of the pigs. They'd skewer him and sell him on the market. And all of a sudden, the words made a connection in his head. Hey, why don't I eat the food of one who returns? Why don't I go back to my father's house and eat the food of one who returns? That's what this is about. This is the truth. This is the meal that He has prepared for us, is to eat these words. Even Yeshua said, the bread that I have to eat is every word of my Father. Every word that proceeds out of His mouth is composed of these letters. This is the meal we come back to. And Ephraim said, you have chastised me, and I have become chastened. Bring me back to you, and I shall return, for you are Yod He Vav He, my Elohim. For after my returning, that same word return is rebellion also. After my rebellion of turning away, I regretted. And after my being made aware, I slapped my thigh in anguish. I was ashamed and humiliated. I bore the disgrace of my youth. That's this word kaf lamed mem. After he was made aware of what the story is and how it plays out, he slaps his thigh in anguish and he goes, gosh, if you will noon me out of this mem, if you will pull me up out of this pit, this place of being a slave to the system, a slave to the language, to the legal words that are just keep changing and crushing us, then I will return to you. This is the cry of the 10 tribes scattered throughout the earth at this point of view. And it might even include the voice of Yehuda and Levi. It's the cry of His people. It's represented by Ephraim, not necessarily only the one tribe. And then, suddenly, the whole first half of this chapter, Yod He Vav He, is, yeah, you guys. Suddenly, when Ephraim's attitude changes, he says, is Ephraim my favorite son? Or such a delightful child that whenever I speak of him, I remember him more and more. It's like the father was so just torn, hurt, disgusted. And then all of a sudden, when his son's attitude changes, the instantaneous reaction is his attitude changes, goes, it's like he's looking through the family photo album and going, gosh, I had such great hopes for Ephraim. I had such plans for Ephraim. In fact, my heart has never failed me. It's just that I was hurt by what he did to me. And he's yearning for Ephraim to return. And then he says, therefore, this is Yahweh speaking, my inner self yearns for him. I will surely take pity on him, Nam Yahweh. He seals that because Ephraim has changed his heart, He will take pity on him. And that word pity, there's so much more to it. That's more the story of looking in the Hebrew words. But then he says this, make road markers for yourself. Set up landmarks for yourself. Set the thoughts of your heart upon the road, the route that you are walking. That's the next order of business. How do you set your thoughts on this stuff? Let's see, you can make a chart. You can make some videos. You can make some bumper stickers. You can make some cards. You can make some t-shirts. You can talk to each other. We should be doing anything we can think of to encourage each other to walk along this path. What path? This path. The word ruach, well, that's spirit. It's also mind, will, breath, and wind. It's also the word that means to expand. In other words, if you have a little balloon and you inflate it to be the size of that ball there, you've increased its ruach. If I opened up this wall and shoved it sideways by 10 feet, I've increased the ruach of this room by 10 feet, a certain matter that we use to measure. If I open the window and let the wind blow through, I'm adding ruach to this room. So the ruach is an expanse. An archer, like this aleph, points at a target, there it is, tav, and lets the aleph fly to the tav target. You yoke up an ox to pull the plow in a straight furrow line until it gets to the mark, tav. The expanse of the distance between aleph and tav is the ruach. The direction, the size, the way, that's all ruach. Because this comes from Yod He Vav He himself, that makes this progressive order of these 22 letters kadosh, kadesh. So this alphabetic letter expanse, 22 steps from Aleph to Tav, is the Ruach HaKodesh, the Holy Spirit. So how do you know? Which Holy Spirit are you listening to? If you listen to this Holy Spirit, this Ruach HaKodesh, He will take you through the Moedim, through Yom HaShabbat, and you will recognize that the man lived 2,000 years ago, known as Yahusha, is indeed HaMashiach. And he came down here to take us back to the Father's house, leave us knowing the way so we could walk it out with the hope set before us that He's going to come back and redeem us unto Him as His betrothed to the place that He has prepared for us. And that's the message in the Aleph Bet, as per this Ruach HaKodesh. And I believe that this then is the plumb line by which we can reckon our beliefs and know they're true. So if somebody else comes and says, like the fellow in Atlanta who says, well, our Elohim would never have a sacrifice of slaughter, burnt offering to be any part of His regulations. Not so. Kaf and Lamed line up with the Mishkan, which is a sacrifice. The red heifer sacrifice outside the gate lining up with Vav Zayin. Therefore, I don't have to listen to another word that man has to say because he's got the wrong plumb line. He's reading a different tape measure and I don't have the time for that. It's everything I can do to spend my time trying to comprehend these words, this instruction, and the reason I'm here is because I'm simply trying to help you all and us all walk on the way, to set your heart on the way that you're supposed to be walking. So by illustrating the reality of these letters, I believe is the way we're supposed to be walking, which include these Moedim. So we got Pesach tomorrow. So we're here to join together observing the commandment to observe Pesach. Why? Because there's 7 Moedim. The word 7 is to swear a vow. In the same way, a young lady getting married walks 7 times around her husband in Jewish traditional custom. As we keep the 7 Moedim, as we keep the 7th day, we are confessing, swearing a vow of fidelity to Yahweh Eloheinu. That we are His and He is ours. Ani ladodi vedodi li.
So really it's not a new covenant, it's just a renewed covenant.
It's a renewed covenant. And so to read this verse and say, I'll make a new covenant and I will have my Torah in their hearts, is because this is His Torah.
Eric, I have to tell you this, because you have said more in the last 10 minutes that I've waited to hear for 30 years to hear. Now, these people, you're all wonderful people, but I have been among the Jews, praying for the Jews for a long time, and dealing with both Jew and Gentile, thinking that wondering how God is going to do this. How is God going to do this? They're so far apart. Do you know what I'm so incredibly so far apart. What you've said in the last 10 minutes is so incredible. I know it looked like I wasn't paying attention. I heard every word you said, okay? I make it my business, okay? So, what's coming, what's more important for you right now is, you know, it's hard enough to get Jews to learn their own stuff, to get to that, okay? They, more than anyone, this is really a message for them. It really is a message for them. But you guys, okay, have got to understand, this is Romans 11. This is where it's gonna flip here, folks, and probably very soon, because if I'm hearing it today, in my hearing, I have heard it today. How it's going to be accomplished, this is how it's gonna be accomplished. And the many facets of it, like, wow, this is the truth. You speak the truth.
Yes, he does. I believe so too.
Yeah, I mean, there were a lot of people here that look like, you know, they're deer being shined. And, no, I'm being totally honest. You know, I am.
No,
Everybody knows
that's
me.
cool.
I'm a Jewish woman, it just comes out over and, okay. But no, what he is saying is just, I also would like to share though, this one thing, that the very first letter of Torah is Bereshit, or Bereshit, okay, the B, okay, the Beit. Okay, the last is what? Lamed. Okay, so, if you read Hebrew backwards, because it is written backwards, Lamed Beit spells
Heart.
heart. So in between the Lamed and the Beit you have what?
The words of
You have the
Torah.
heart of God. You have the heart of God. And the shepherd's crook is the Lamed, and the Beit is the house. You have authority over the house. And so everything in between has authority over you. And so I believe there is another, I believe this makes sense to me, is in studying Hebrew but you know, the people that need to hear this, it is not so much the Gentiles. I think they'll get it. I mean, just all the Jewish stuff is overwhelming to them, and I visit a lot of groups and things. It's overwhelming. If you haven't lived your whole life in it, it's difficult. But yeah, I think, and I'm being straight up with you, people aren't going to take this chart home and start to copy it, okay? I mean, it's overwhelming enough to even look at but I think, like, I need to learn this. I need to learn this. I need to learn this. I need to present it whenever I can, okay? Because this is exciting. This tells me it's happening. Thank you. You know, this is so exciting. I can't tell you how exciting this is. I
can
waited a
appreciate how
long time to
exciting it
hear
is.
this. I've waited.
So can.
Yeah.
No, I've waited a long time to hear this because
There was a lady that contacted us a few years ago from Norway. She says, I'm just some little old grandma in the middle of Norway. She said, I've waited my whole life to hear these words.
yeah, you got it. You've been given a gift.
I think so too. We think so.
I would probably pray for you for a gift of teaching, okay? Because it's in your head, okay? It all comes out at once. To the I don't want to say the.
Naive.
No, it's not naive. It's just you have to live among the Jews and understand how we study. I mean, and we study. I mean, we study every day.
Every day.
every day.
All day, yeah.
Well, and Eric does too, and
And
I
I'm
know.
sure he does, so, I mean, but to a normal person who doesn't spend their entire day staring at Torah and, you know, discussing every little jot and tittle and, you know, the things we discuss are like, just drive me nuts sometimes, okay? But, this would interest so many people that are just like, you know, and,
Good, well, maybe we can get them hooked up with the videos.
no, but this means a blessing though, because somebody should read that whole, who's got, Romans 11, read it,
Go ahead.
because this is what it means to you.
All Israel will be saved, the part, or you want the whole book?
Read it.
The whole,
It's not that big, long. Because this is what's coming, this is the good news.
I think so.
This is the good news. Hallelujah! Finally, we're here, you
Yeah,
know?
Michael, I got me.
I could show you plenty more to validate this. In Daniel 12, the words right after this prove this to be true, which if anybody's interested, we can go into that, but not to take up.
And the other thing I need to tell you guys is this. If you have read the New Testament from any perspective other than Jewish, you've missed it. The first thing I read was where Nicodemus came at the time of Passover and said, what do I need to do to get in, you know? He
Okay,
said,
Ro-
you must be born of water and the Spirit. Okay, I get that. The word mikvah means what? Gathering, the gathering of the water. When we go down to the mikvah,
My sister?
into it, and we come up out of it, it's like we're created again, a new creation. We give our hearts,
My
minds,
sister.
bodies,
sister.
everything over to the Father, and we become like a new creation coming up out of the waters, okay? Do you understand?
Yeah.
And
Is it still
so
going?
that's what Jesus knew, that they would, it was time of Passover, and he would be going down into the mikvah. But you must be born of water and the Spirit. Okay, so if you've read it any other way, the mikvah was nothing new for these people. No.
So his going into the tomb was a type of mikvah, coming
Yeah,
out
yeah.
as under the Spirit.
What- Yes, and so now comes Jesus, and the Pharisees and Sadducees came. Not all are bad people, you know. No. Okay, and
some oomph in it when you
they
read
talked
it,
to John the
especially the
Baptist, and they
first
said,
verse.
now, we know that only two people can go take someone into the mikvah of the Jordan. One is the Messiah. The other one is Elijah. And so what did they ask him? Who are you? Are you Elijah? He said, no. Then you must be Mashiach. You must be the Messiah. No, but one is coming. So what does Yeshua do? He comes like a good Jew at the time of Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, goes into the mikvah of the Jordan, okay? And when he comes up, what does Father say? This is my beloved Son in whom I am well pleased, and the Spirit descends on him like a dove. No, a bird did not come and sit on his head.
Right.
You know, so unless,
Okay, Romans chapter 11. Chris is on.
Chris is gonna speak.
You ready?
Ready.
I'm excited.
I ask then, did God reject his people? By no means!
No,
I am an Israelite myself, a descendant of Abraham from the tribe of Benjamin. God did not reject his people, whom he foreknew. Don't you know what the scripture says in the passage about Elijah, how he appealed to God against Israel? Lord, they have killed your prophets and torn down your altars. I am the only one left, and they are trying to kill me. And what was God's answer to him? I have reserved for myself 7,000 who have not bowed the knee to Baal. So too, at the present time, there is a remnant chosen by grace. And if by grace, then it is no longer by works. If it were, grace would no longer be grace. What then? What Israel sought so earnestly, it did not obtain, but the elect did. The others were hardened, as it is written. God gave them a spirit of stupor, eyes so they could not see, and ears so they could not hear, to this very day. And David says, may their table become a snare and a trap, a stumbling block and a retribution for them. May their eyes be darkened so they cannot see, and their backs be bent forever. Then again I asked, did they stumble so as to fall beyond recovery? Not at all. Rather, because of their transgression, salvation has come to the Gentiles to make Israel envious. But if their transgression means riches for the world, and their loss means riches for the Gentiles,
Hallelujah.
how much greater riches will their fullness bring?
Hallelujah.
I'm talking to you, Gentiles, inasmuch as I am the apostle to the Gentiles. I make much of my ministry in the hope that I may somehow arouse my own people to envy and save some of them. For if their rejection is the reconciliation of the world, what will their acceptance be but life from the dead? If the part of the dough offered as first fruits is holy, then the whole batch is holy. If the root is holy, so are the branches. If some of the branches have been broken off, and you, though a wild olive shoot, has been grafted in among the others, and now share in the nourishing sap from the olive root, do not boast over those branches. If you do, consider this. You do not support the root, but the root supports you. You will say then, branches were broken off so that I could be grafted in. Granted, but they were broken off because of unbelief, and you stand by faith. Do not be arrogant, but be afraid. For if God did not spare the natural branches, he will not spare you either. Consider, therefore, the kindness and sternness of God. Sternness to those who fell, but kindness to you, provided that you continue in his kindness. Otherwise, you will also be cut off. You also will be cut off. And if they do not persist in unbelief, they will be grafted in, for God is able to graft them in again. After all, if you were cut out of an olive tree that is wild by nature, and contrary to nature were grafted into a cultivated olive tree, how much more readily will these, the natural branches, be grafted into their own olive tree? I do not want you to be arrogant of this mystery, brothers, so that you may not be conceited. Israel has experienced a hardening in part until the full number of the Gentiles has come in. And so all Israel will be saved, as it is written. The deliverer will come from Zion. He will turn godliness away from Jacob. And this is my covenant with them when I take away their sins. As far as the gospel is concerned, they are enemies on your account. But as far as election is concerned, they are loved on account of the patriarchs. For God's gifts and his call are irrevocable. Just as you, who were at one time disobedient to God, have now received mercy as a result of their disobedience, so too they have now become disobedient in order that they too may now receive mercy as a result of God's mercy on you. For God has bound all men over to disobedience, so that he may have mercy on them all. Oh, the depth of riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God, how unsearchable his judgments, how in his paths beyond tracing out. Who has known the mind of the Lord? Or who has been his counselor? Who has ever given to God that God should repay him? For from him and through him and to him are all things. To him be the glory forever. Amen.
So, the anti-Semitism and the anti-rabbinic this and that has got to stop. People have to learn, and if there's something that you don't understand, you've got to try to learn about it. Really. That's what I tell my people in the group all the time. You've got to quit the hatred. You've got to quit the anti-Semitism, the anti-this, anti-that. You need to have a good foundation in the Torah, and then understand and study the rest. That includes the New Testament.